G'day guys, Chris Durry here. Today I'm going to reveal the best kept secret in crypto. And the best kept secret, of course, is Richard Heart and his projects. So we've got Hex, we've got Pulse Chain, and we've got PulseX. So Pulse Chain and PulseX are expected to launch somewhere around 2 to 3 months from now, to give a rough timeline. Whereas Hex is an established cryptocurrency and it's a top 10 market cap coin. But basically these are gate kept projects. So in other words, if you look at mainstream investing websites, mainstream cryptocurrency websites, if you look at a lot of investing YouTube channels, a lot of crypto YouTube channels, they neglect completely to talk about any of these projects, which I find remarkable and really quite disrespectful for such really sound and capable projects. And that's really, I guess, my intention today in, I guess, revealing this, where these aren't by any stretch of the imagination buy recommendations. It's just simply I want you to be aware of it because, frankly, these are projects that there should be widespread public awareness about. So that's sort of my intention here today. So to start off with Hex. So what is Hex? So Hex is a bit like Bitcoin, except it pays fees to Ethereum miners and inflation to time lockers. So with Bitcoin, it pays inflation to miners to protect network security, whereas with Hex, it inflates to pay time lockers to protect the price. So why is Hex relevant? Well, Hex is relevant because it grew 10,000x in 623 days. So that's the equivalent to 1 million%. And the average interest rate is 38%. And it's also important to note that the inflation rate, and this is a fixed inflation rate per annum, is only 3.69%. So you're gaining interest at a substantially greater pace than you're being inflated. So with Hex, you're basically looking at something that is a high growth, high yielding asset where basically you're the bank and you're the beneficiary of inflation. So the question you should really be asking at this stage is, how are these interest rates manageable with such a reasonable inflation rate? Well, the answer's simple. Less than 10% of the total supply of Hex is staked. So with that being the case, that allows for such big payouts at the end of the day. And you've also got people that will try and prematurely take out their funds. So with the time locking features, basically, if you lock up your funds for, let's call it 1,000 days, well, if you try and take it out at day 500, well, you're only ever going to be able to get back your principal. And then all that interest goes to those other stakers that fulfill their promises of saying, we're going to keep our funds locked in until that time lock period concludes. So with really, I guess, all those game theory dynamics, it really allows for such incredible rates of interest for those that stick to the time lock period. And if over time, and it's quite likely this will be the case, that a lot more people who hold Hex will decide to stake, well, if that's the case, well, that means that there's potentially less sellers, which gives, I guess, greater potential for more explosive price growth. So although you might be losing a little bit at the end of the day in terms of what you might earn in interest, well, it gives a bit more upside in terms of that potential for growth in actual value of Hex. So that's a really important thing to be aware of there too. So how to understand Hex as an investment? So Hex is basically a buy and hold delaying gratification play, where to maximize your returns, you time lock your funds for the maximum time length, which is 5,555 days, which equates to a little bit over 15 years. And really, to me, I view it as something like a bond or certificate of deposit killer, where essentially you're getting not only incredible rates of price growth because demand typically outweighs supply, but further to that, well, you've also got the epic rate of interest. So for me, that's really the purpose of getting a position in Hex and why you would buy if indeed you did choose to buy. So how to buy Hex if you want a position in it? So basically, being the gatekept project that it is, you can't buy it on a mainstream exchange. You have to buy it through a decentralized exchange. So some examples might be Uniswap or 1inch. So for some examples of some possible game plans if you want a position in Hex. So the first one and the most obvious one is to buy and hold and stake for 5,555 days. This way, it maximizes the rate of interest you get, and it also means that you're only really paying the Ethereum gas fees to stake once and then end stake once. So option number 2, and this is a popular one, but a lot of people decide to set up a staking ladder. So some people might decide, let's say, to do set up a stake for each year, and then with the purpose of at the end of each year restaking the principal and then extracting the interest and then using that as a form of passive income. That's also quite a common and quite sensible play if you do believe that Hex will continue over those, I guess, shorter time frames to perform. So the next strategy with Hex, and this is a popular one in the crypto community, but buying the dips. So with Hex, it's really important to know that for its market cap, it is extremely, extremely volatile. And the reason for that is because of the incredibly low trading volume, which is both in some respects a strength and a weakness of Hex. But it really means that if you're someone where you like to buy the dips, well, with Hex, you can really, to a great extent, buy those dips, because the 4 biggest dips with Hex, we've had an 81% dip, a 72% dip, an 86% dip, and a 79% dip. So if you like buying the dips and you're not afraid of volatility, well, you really do need to be aware of, I guess, those dynamics within Hex. And if it does have an extreme drop in price, well, that's more of an opportunity to load up than a time to really get fearful ultimately. Because that, if you don't have that mindset with Hex, well, you shouldn't be buying a position. So another strategy some people might implement might be buying Hex now, or getting a position in Hex before they launch a Pulse chain. So basically with Pulse chain, it might launch, let's call it 2 months from now. But the reason a lot of people might be looking to get a position in Hex now is because however much Hex you have on the Ethereum ecosystem, you'll get an exact copy of all the Hex that you hold, even if it's being staked on the Pulse chain. So let's say you own 1,000 Hex. Well, that would mean that once Pulse chain launches, you get 1,000 Hex on Pulse chain as well. And my best guess with the Hex on Pulse chain is that on Pulse chain, Hex will in time become more valuable, simply because the fees for both, whether it's for staking, whether it's for ending the stake, it's cheaper fees on Pulse chain compared to certainly the exorbitant fees that we currently have to endure on Ethereum. So so it's almost like a buy one, get one free, except the one you're getting free might in the future be more valuable. But I guess the disclaimer for those that do go with this strategy is that, well, once Pulse chain launches, it's possible that the value of Hex does decrease, with some people possibly buying Hex with this thinking. So one other opportunity there might be with Hex, and this will only apply once Pulse chain and PulseX have launched, but you might be able to use Hex and use it as a liquidity pair on PulseX. So, which would mean that you'd be getting various reward tokens for doing so. If you've got the same amount of, whether it's, say, Hex on Ethereum and Hex on Pulse chain, you could use them as a liquidity pair. Let's say you've got 1,000 of each, well, then you can set sort of the prices on either side. So that could be a potential way to get reward tokens. And with that, that could be another sort of way of, I guess, earning an income through investing in Hex. So to go through Richard's second project, which is Pulse chain. So for those that are wondering what Pulse chain is, it's like Ethereum, but instead of being proof of work, it's proof of stake. And it's a significant enhancement over Ethereum in its current form, as Pulse chain is really basically a more energy efficient, cheaper, faster, fee-burning Ethereum fork. So Pulse chain will be the largest airdrop or initial distribution in the history of blockchain. So being a hard fork of Ethereum, you'll have all your ERC20s and NFTs replicated on Pulse chain. So the bonus for those benefiting from this is these assets start from a value of 0, and from there we'll experience price discovery. So really the benefit of that is from a tax implication perspective. It's really beneficial if things start from 0. So to benefit, you really need to make sure that your ERC20s aren't on a centralized exchange, and instead they need to be in some sort of wallet. So maybe that's MetaMask, or maybe that's a hard wallet such as whether it's a Ledger or a Trezor. So unlike Ethereum, which doesn't have a maximum supply, Pulse chain is designed as a deflationary asset. So basically 25% of the fees will be burned and the other 75% go to stakers and validators. So on how to buy Pulse chain. So you could have potentially sacrificed during the sacrifice period. So that would have meant giving up some sort of other cryptocurrencies in exchange for what will, once launched, be Pulse chain. But otherwise, you'll probably be having to buy it through a decentralized exchange upon launch. So you'll have to wait a few months to be able to gain a position if you didn't sacrifice previously during the now concluded sacrifice period. So for some possible game plans if you want positions in Pulse Chain. So the most obvious one is you just buy and stake Pulse Chain. So another option is you can provide liquidity on PulseX for Pulse Chain with other trading pairs. So whether it's with Hex, Ethereum, maybe it's stablecoins such as USDC or USDT, they're all likely to become among the really sort of high volume trading pairs for Pulse Chain on PulseX. So, and by providing these liquidity pairs, you'll be gaining reward tokens for doing so. So if you're an NFT fan, Pulse Chain is something you should really be aware of, because again, if you've got any NFTs that you're holding on Ethereum, well, you're going to get that copy on Pulse Chain. And in terms of buying and selling, well, because you're not contending with Ethereum gas fees, all buying and selling activity should be a lot cheaper on Pulse Chain. So there's great potential really in terms of the short, medium, maybe even long term, depending on how gas fees on Ethereum in the long run contend with fees on Pulse Chain. But in terms of as a platform for NFTs, I think Pulse Chain is really a great place for it. And the other obvious opportunity that I'm seeing on Pulse Chain, and I've already gone into this a little bit, but buying Hex on Pulse Chain. So of course, if you're holding any Hex on Ethereum, well, guess what? You're getting your copy over on Pulse Chain. So that's really important. But also, again, if you want to start buying positions in Hex once Pulse Chain is launched, it's going to be cheaper to do so on Pulse Chain. Because again, if you want to start, stake, end stake, it's a lot cheaper on Pulse Chain. So really, Pulse Chain should be really a primary location to really be quite busy with Hex. And then ultimately, I'm of the suspicion at least that you buying and selling Hex on the Ethereum ecosystem will be more relevant if you're a whale potentially comparative to Pulse Chain, where I really think there should be a lot more user adoption. So to move on to Richard's third project, which is PulseX. So basically PulseX, it's like Uniswap. So basically, in other words, you're looking at a decentralized exchange. So for some details about PulseX. So basically users can swap one coin for another coin on PulseX, paying a 0.29% fee, of which 21% of that fee buys PulseX coins from the PulseX system itself and burns those coins, which reduces supply, which is obviously great for the value of PulseX. 76% of that fee goes to liquidity providers, and then 3% of that fee goes to an address you have no expectation of. So for a quick summary of PulseX, so basically you're looking at lower fees, no inflation, fees that cause supply to go down, and you've got no admin keys and no middlemen. So if you're looking for a position in PulseX, how you can do that is by being involved in the current sacrifice phase. So that started a few days ago. And if you want to be part of the sacrifice phase, the best opportunity or the best time to do so is before January the 10th if you want to maximize your possible return. But the other option, of course, is if you're looking for a position, is just to market buy once PulseX is launched a few months from now. So for some possible game plans with PulseX, so you could pretty much just be a buy and hold investor and just really enjoy the appreciation as demand grows and supply drops. So that's one option. Other option is you can be a liquidity provider and you can earn incentive tokens, or other option is you can just do both. Thanks for watching, guys, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for future updates. And if there's anything you didn't understand, make sure you hit me up in the comments section below. I'm happy to answer every and all question out there as best as I can anyway. And I also suggest with this video in particular, it's a really valuable one that for anyone with an interest in cryptocurrency, really this is a video that should really be shared around quite widely. And I'd say the same for anyone that has an interest in bonds or certificates of deposit as well, because Hex, in my opinion at least, and this is my own personal opinion, it's not financial advice, but I consider Hex to be really quite a substantial upgrade to a bond or certificate of deposit. So not that past performance necessarily is an indication of future performance. So yeah, there's some of my thoughts, and yeah, let me know in the comments section below some of your thoughts. But anyway, guys, see you in the next video.